Hey everybody, it's me, your boy, Ernest. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about Marxism and ecology, and we talk about a certain topic called eco-tear, and it ends in an ism. Uh, YouTube doesn't like that word, it's a naughty word, so uh, me and the guest Bruno will be calling it eco Robloxism. Okay, so subject about that is like spiking trees, seed bombing, stuff like that. So hope you enjoy the podcast. Remember, eco Robloxism is not a thing. We're just getting around YouTube's naughty word detector. It's eco tear and ends in ism. Hope you enjoy the podcast.
Right? And you know, there's different ways to interpret Marxism. It's a very old book, and you can interpret it in many ways. But the basic principle, I think, from a general perspective, is that human struggle is an economic struggle, right? So a lot of historians can agree, some are historians too, right? That that Marx serves a really important role in history because it demonstrates that economics are a driving force throughout human history.
Mm-hmm.
And why a lot of important events happen is because there are the different economic struggles within human societies.
Mm-hmm.
Like the from a Marxist perspective, the American Revolution it's an economic struggle between the colonial settlers and the British Empire, right? And slavery and all its horrors can be explained because it's an economic struggle,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you can be a historical Marxist and you will live in the Marxist perspective of the world in history, but you don't necessarily agree with his political and economic views,
Mm-hmm.
which is fine. But Marx is a very rich uh, author, and you know, it's a it's a very important um, writer that has influenced a lot of academia and ideologies throughout the world, even we like it or not. But yeah, so that's how I define Marxism.
Yeah, I think I would echo your sentiments. Like you were saying, how there's different ways to read Marx and different interpretations. Like you have Marxist Leninism, you have Mao, like all these other interpretations of Marx. So there's not one way to read Marx, and Marx isn't I would say, um, the inventor of communism or something like that. Like those ideas have been around way before Marx was writing on them. Marx was just like one of the most important figures to talk about it, especially in his context. In his time, he was probably the biggest one writing about it.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
yeah. So, from my understanding of um, Marxism and more specifically communism, the the key characteristics are each according to his own like needs. So you get what you need and you give what you can, right? That's and workers owning the means of production. That's the biggest one that you will always hear. And then uh, the disillusionment of the state. So Marx talks about how you get socialism is like the period of when the revolution is happening, and then you get communism. Once the revolution's done, the state dissolves, and yeah, you've got your communist utopia, right? From my understanding, that's pretty much how it works. So, um, what would you say to the common like counter arguments for against Marxism that Marxism it always fails, like Marxism always fails, it's a failed government. What would be your replies to arguments like that?
Well, Marxism, of course, can fail, right? But capitalism fails. It constantly fails, like any economic model. You know, no economic model is perfect,
Yeah.
right? But I think the argument that Marxism always fails, it's just a sort of way of saying capitalism is the only thing we have,
Hmm.
right? Is this sort of like neoliberal understanding that capitalism, that's human nature. That's
Hmm.
like that's it. It doesn't have to be like that. You can look back in like in previous societies and like Native American cultures or traditional, you know, cultures around the world, and you will find that they not only reject capitalism, but they embrace a lot of communist-like traditions and economic models. Like I was studying about native tribes in North America, same way that Marx studied them, and it's this sort of thing that profit is not an incentive. What's important is the community,
Hmm.
right? And is you have this shared understanding and ownership of goods and land,
Hmm.
right? Which is totally incompatible with capitalism, right? So is this idea that every economic model that is not capitalism is going to fail? That's just not accurate,
Hmm.
right? And you know, we can look at even if we agree that Marxism fails at one point or another, every economic model is going to fail eventually for
Yeah.
either or reason.
Yeah.
But that's just like a misconception that I want to clear out. Like Marxism is viable. It might be hard. It might even hard to like think about
Hmm.
something beyond capitalism.
Hmm.
But that's that's our society.
Yeah.
It's capitalism based.
Yeah. It
Like
doesn't mean that we shouldn't try, right? Because
yeah.
capitalism already is not failing. I think is failing. I think a lot of people during the 2008 crash realized that. I think a lot of people right now during the pandemic realized capitalism isn't really for them. It's for the rich people, but not for people like me and you. Um, yeah, I agree with what you were saying that um, looking at uh, Marxism always fails is um, a very narrow minded viewpoint and kind of ahistorical because there was plenty of systems before capitalism, as you were saying. And um, I guess another misconception that I wanted to tie in, but I forgot, was you hear this a lot. Oh, so like communism has killed like millions of people. Like you hear that all the time. Communism has killed so many people. Communism killed millions of people, and then you go, okay, let's look at uh, states that like capitalism. Let's see how many deaths they have caused. Then you look at their deaths, and then you're like, uh oh, it seems that all these states are causing tons and tons of death. Like, how many people have starved to death under capitalism?
Yeah, but that's an interesting aspect that you mentioned. And I think it relates back to American or Western culture in general. Like the way that people count deaths is different in every historical account,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what's normally happened to account for the deaths of people under a central government is that it's people killed by the military,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's usually how historians do it. Like how many people died in export? Okay, that's the number of people that died because of Henry VIII
Mm-hmm.
or so and so, right? It's not the same framework when Western historians talk about communist leaders. Because, for example, with Stalin and Mao, the ginormous numbers that you see are not people who were killed by the military. It was people who starved to death, right? So that includes famines and that includes like natural disasters,
Mm-hmm.
for which, if you study the history of Russia and China, are always severe, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the issue here is that when you look at Western leaders of capitalism. They don't include the deaths caused by starvation or by natural disaster. And this is part of a broader effort, a broader historical effort to dismantle or what's the word? Place a bad image
Yeah,
on
inflate the numbers.
communism. Yeah, inflate the numbers.
Yeah.
Which at one point it might be true that a lot of people died. I'm not trying to say that population didn't die under communism, but the framework by which these deaths are accounted is not fair.
Yeah.
Right. Like for example, in China, you get a lot of this like, oh, people died of starvation. That shouldn't be towards criticizing communism so much that it should be criticizing like a lack of international efforts to relieve flooding, to relieve famine, right? So of course
yeah, or
that's true.
just bad leadership. Like just because you have you've achieved a communist state doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna have good leaders, right? Like you can have good revolutionaries, but maybe not good leaders. And I was about to say one of the ways that I've seen people inflate like the numbers of like people that the Soviet Union has killed was like they'll count the deaths of people of Nazis that were executed, like clump them in with like the civilians. You know what I'm saying? Like they killed like the number that you hear a lot is like 60 million or 20 million people, and that number is very very inflated. I think from what I've seen, so I'm not a historian, but like a more accurate number that I've heard or seen is like 6 million, which is a big difference than
Yeah.
the 20 million or whatever number I said previously.
Yeah, and if you see this sort of discourse is very much alive in our discussion of communism, but it's a remnant of the sort of the Cold War. It's this sort of like propaganda machine against communist governments. It's designed to be outrageous. It's designed to be like almost like it's almost like it comes from a book. It's almost like, oh, so many people died under communism. It's this sort of like it's almost unbelievable how many people died,
Yeah.
right? And that's not a coincidence. It's like a manufactured thing.
Yeah, from my understanding that like all those like death numbers they came from like the Black Book or some one of those books that most of the writers from it were saying like, "Oh yeah, we went a little overboard with that one." Like
Yeah, and similarly, like you can look at these numbers, like, but if you have the mentality ingrained in your head that there's something fundamentally wrong with communism and the Soviet Union, you're gonna place like a bad look at them.
yeah.
Either or. Like there's a famous writer which I really like called Michael Parenti, right? He's he's a notorious scholar and a historian, right? And he says that when people want to look for when people want to promulgate their own agenda, they're gonna look up their agenda in every place. Like for example, Western people when looking at the Soviet Union, if a church is full, it's because the state is mandating people to go to church. If a church is empty, it's because people have lost faith because of communism. If people are going to the store, it's because they're panicking in the middle of a crisis. If they're not in the store, it's because there's a food shortage. It's this sort of thing that because of the Cold War and because of the propaganda machine in America, like everything is assigned so other economic models are scary, right? And we're like, oh no, this wouldn't happen in Western society. This wouldn't happen in capitalism. That's what you put millions of dollars in the military so we can keep that away, right?
But and then the funny thing is that it does happen here too. We have supply
Yeah.
chain issues. We have food shortages. The big one here in Texas was caused by Abbott with him
Yeah.
slowing down the fucking uh, trucks on the border. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I like how you were saying that the like the Western countries They don't. They're not measuring fairly, right? Because they don't look at, or they don't count the atrocities under capitalism or caused by states who like the capitalist economic system. You're never going to look at it fairly if you have an agenda, for sure.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and communism is important because capitalism is horrible. It's 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 such a terrible economic model
Yeah.
because it accomplishes its goal, right, of keeping profit as high as possible,
Mm-hmm.
right? So at first it's nice because you get a business going on, and the end like business goes well, the line goes up, which is fine in its own way.
Yeah.
You get more goods, like Western Europe and Northern America is like the most important economic zone in the history of the planet. That's fine, I would say. That's desirable.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue is that in many ways that mentality of like we're in this for the profit goes into other aspects that should not be with that mentality.
Oh yeah.
Like I was thinking about like how we look at education and how we look at our personal relationships. Like it's not so much that we are in those things because we care or because we enjoy them or because we even get some pleasure out of it. It's more so because it's profitable, right? Like when you look at someone, you need to look at their income, their financial status,
Mm-hmm.
their um, what's it called, their economic position, their labor,
Mm-hmm.
their job, their salary, their finances,
Mm-hmm.
their qualifications. So a relationship is not so much about love as so much of it's love as permitted by capitalism, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even if you are in love and you get a good partner, the issue is enjoying that relationship within capitalism, right? Like people have to work and people stress a lot, like bills. And even if you want to go out, like everything is cost. Everything is like cost based, right? Like if you want to have a nice dinner, you probably have to spend a couple of bucks in that. If you want to just enjoy nature, you probably have to spend a lot of money in going to a nature place. If you want to watch a movie, you probably have to pay to watch the movie. Everything is money based, even our relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because money allows you to have a better relationship. In theory, like you can access the better goods, the better cultural services, the better things, right? And and for education, as far as education goes, like if you ask someone why are they choosing their major in college, or why are they pursuing this specific career, most of the time it's gonna be because of they want to make money, right? And when you work on something, you're not only like putting your time, you're literally putting your life into what you do,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like so, a lot of people go to medical school wanting just the money, so they put all their life, all their time into something that they don't really like, and they become unhappy. But they have the money, and they think they're happy, but that's not it. Like that mindset of like, oh, I gotta get the money and then gonna be happy. Like, it's just not compatible.
Yeah. Yeah. And, all that grind culture is ridiculous. Like, we know money doesn't make you happy. Like, there's been like artists with millions of dollars who have killed themselves and you know have been unhappy. So yeah, no, I agree. One of the things that I wanted to add on about the how we kind of our love life revolves around capitalism. Let's say like you're trying to plan a family, right? Like you want to have a kid. You go to your job and you go, hey, can I get some paternity or maternity leave? And the company, they're gonna try to find any way to deny it, right? Because that doesn't profit them. What profit do they get from putting you and giving you enough money to go to maternity leave or putting you in paternity leave? They're not going to do that. How many vacation days do you get? They're like from the company's perspective, they're being most profitable if they can find a way to give you the least amount of uh, vacation days they can,
Yeah.
because it doesn't make them any
Yeah.
profits.
And it's this sort of thing like if you ask someone like, do you want to have a kid? Some people are gonna say, no, I don't want to bring a kid because life sucks, right? But some other people are gonna say, and I would say most people are gonna say like, no, because it's expensive, right? In that is like an implied like classism.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, okay, so rich people can have kids, but poor people can't
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of valid reasons, right? But the simple fact that you cannot enjoy something as basic as a family because you don't have money is just horrifying,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. Like, I remember people were talking about how much they paid for when they gave birth. Dropped a couple thou to give birth. Like, that's absolutely ridiculous. But you have to pay a couple $1,000s after you're in hospital fees after you're done giving birth. That's ridiculous to me. Um, when you were talking about education, it made me start thinking about like how many people not only went to college because they thought it would like give them a good job, like might pick this major. How many people were forced through college by their parents because they wanted to get them that good job? Like how many people were wanted to major in like gender studies or philosophy, one of the other perceived like low income majors. How many people wanted to do that, and then their parents were like, no, you go business major or something like that? Because I feel like that
Yeah,
happens a lot, a scary amount of
and
times.
and even like what kind of people go to college? Like college has become like such a limited thing because of income, right? So the kind of people who go to college is oftentimes not the people who would like to go to college, or the people who can afford it, right? Like even if you get the scholarships at school,
Mm-hmm.
college is so expensive.
Oh yeah.
Like you have to pay for your apartment if you live close. You have to pay for the food. If you don't live close, you gotta pay for the gas, which implies that you have a car, right? So it's such a basic thing as education. It becomes about money, right? So it's not like a desirable thing, but it becomes an investment about money.
Mm-hmm.
And and so the purpose of college is not to educate, but to make profit, right? And we see it as like if you talk to like a lot of people in school, like most of the appointments are like cheap, and they don't have a lot of money, and the professors are going to pay well, and the infrastructure is terrible, and so where does all the money for college goes? Like it goes to like salaries. Like I think if you look at AUTRUE faculty, like there's people who make like $500,000 a year or $1 million. I would say I don't remember, but it's this sort of thing. Like college has become this sort of like such a such a privilege, right? And it's crazy because I think college is a nice place. It's a nice it's nice to have an education, and if you don't like it, that's fine. But even then, like the current economy is made in such a way that college is a necessity. But at the same time, not a lot of people can access it because it's such a large investment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it's such an incredible privilege to go to college, as you were saying. Um, I really like what you just brought up. I was just about to bring it up myself because, like, it's true. So you'll hear, like, oh, you don't have to go to college. You don't need to go to college. But if you want certain jobs, certain opportunities, you do need to go to college and you do have to do well. If you if you don't go to college, chances are you'll or if you don't go to college or some sort of trade school, chances are you're going to end up not getting paid as much as somebody who had the the capital to go to college, who had the money to go to college. You're probably not going to make as much as they do.
Yeah, and it's this sort of like society is not based around like your actual capabilities and your actual abilities, but rather this sort of like complicated knickknacks of financial institutions and educational institutions. So society, like again, like it is reduced to making money,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm. Like, um, I'm sure this has been already like talked to death about, but how capitalism kills art. Like, it's not profitable to be an artist. Like, who would want to be an artist? Some crazy person, right? Because
Yeah,
you don't get paid all that well unless you start making NFTs or something like that. But
yeah,
even then, chances are it's just gonna get ripped by someone who's already like big in the NFT community. Your art's just gonna get stolen, and they're gonna put it on their token, and boom, now they're the ones making the millions of dollars, and not you.
yeah.
Um,
So even then, like music becomes like a privileged thing or like a privilege in its own thing.
mhm.
Like if you want to pursue music or even if you want to play guitar, like if you're working to sustain yourself, it's very hard to play guitar. It's very hard to enjoy music when you're laboring like two jobs or three jobs because you cannot afford like basic necessities, right?
Uh-huh.
And so this sort of thing like goes beyond just oh I want to do music, but it's like the ability to like enjoy music. It becomes like directly related to income, right? So
Mhm.
in the basic standard of living or in the basic like economic model, as you said, like musicians and or the other artists are not in the picture unless you find a way to make your thing profitable, right? And then you can go into like what kind of artist goes further in this economic model, and it's like it's a very specific kind of art. It's a kind of art that is designed to sell as opposed to like to be enjoyed.
Mhm. And even if by some miracle you're able to make the music you want and then get picked up by some label company, most the label company is going to be the one making most of the money, not the artist.
Yeah. So in that sense, like everything is about money and capitalism. Everything is about profit,
Mm-hmm.
and yet we still like feel like trash because that the premise of capitalism is like if everything is about profit, everything is gonna be better because profit is profit. Profit is nice,
The line
and
goes like,
then you get our society, which a lot of things are not nice. A lot of things fail, right?
mm-hmm. Yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit about why um, Marxism or communism is important. Is um, Marx talks about, or he writes a lot about how the alienation between the working class and the labor that they produce makes them sad because you're not owning your labor. You're not owning what you make, right? He talks about that alienation and how it makes us feel sad and unfulfilled. And I think you that sentiment will echo with a lot of the workers here. How the 9 to 5 job isn't very fulfilling.
Yeah. Like I was thinking, like people who work at fast food, like it's crazy that one item that they make, they cannot even afford it because the pay is so low. Like if you go to Chick-fil-A, a Chick-fil-A sandwich and like soda with the fries, it's like $10. They get paid like 8.50. So it's like they cannot even own the thing that they make,
Mm-hmm. For every
right?
hour they work, yeah.
Yeah, so it's so stupid. And if you go to Starbucks, like the reason that people are unionizing in Starbucks and that people are relating more to like reject capitalism is that capitalism works so well that it fucks over people. Like Starbucks is doing everything in its own right to like keep profits high, and that's why the company has been making like record profits for years. But the workers are not seeing that, right? So that's and people they know that that's unfair. That's why they're trying to unionize.
Yeah. Another thing is how more innovative we've become because things have been getting so automated. Like
Yeah,
automation has taken, like you go to Walmart, who goes to the like to get checked out with like the people? No, everybody just goes to the self checkout.
yeah,
All those people losing their jobs, they're not getting any of the benefits or profits from that
yeah,
automation, or however the fuck you say that word. It's
yeah. And like Walmart, they're making record profits, right? And even without automation, like they're doing great.
yeah.
But then you look at the workers, and they're not doing so great. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not a coincidence.
Yeah.
That's a necessity,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Yeah, you have to pay your workers just enough so they can keep getting by, so they can keep
Yeah.
scraping by, but not too much though, because then you're losing too much profit. You just need enough to keep them alive, which is a very sick way to think about things, which is why Marxism and communism are important because they give the workers more rights.
Yeah. I agree completely. And it's like, why is that important? Because everyone is a worker to some
Mm-hmm.
degree. And like we live in capitalism again, and like, the biggest lie of capitalism is like, oh, you're gonna be a worker for a period of time, and then you can start your own business, and then you can become rich.
Mm-hmm.
And what that causes is that people they don't want to be workers, right? And they want to be business owners. And when they become business owners, there's just that they are the ones exploiting, right? So in essence, what capitalism is selling is not, um, an end to like the working class. It's just saying a transformation. So the working class who can make it out of their conditions of like misery, right? The ones who can make it, the ones who can make enough profit, they stop becoming working class, and then they become the owners, the capitalists, and then they can start oppressing people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like with this whole thing about Elon Musk, the premise is that he's such a good business owner, right? Like he's such a good person, which is obviously fake. He's a piece of shit. But you know, the reason that he works in the public media is because people want to be like him, and they're like, oh, he came from nothing, quote unquote. It's like I can do that, right? Like I can become like the next Elon Musk. But if you look at what that entails, then you get to see like, well, maybe he's not a really good person.
Yeah. Um, with what you were saying about how Elon Musk is such a good businessman. Like people will give those examples, or all these billionaires or multimillionaires, like how they're so successful. Meanwhile, a lot of their companies, uh, they need the government subsidies to not collapse, right? Like we need the government needs to keep paying them because if their companies collapse, then society collapses, and we don't want that. So you guys will get money from the government, money from the taxpayers, But will they see any of those profits or benefits? Nope. Just you, though, Elon Musk. You get the profits and benefits, which is crazy to think about. Not a
Yeah,
fan.
and then we can talk about so the profits are there, right? And you don't see it, like only Elon Musk see it. And then you can talk about the other thing that he causes, which is environmental damage,
Oh, yeah.
right? And then we can talk about ecology, right?
Yes. Yeah. So, um, we know the planet is on the verge of being inhabitable. Like, most of the climate scientists say that we need to get, not only do we need to get our emissions to zero, but we need to get our emissions to zero yesterday, and we have to start pooling pooling the carbon that we've put in the atmosphere. We've got to start taking it out already. Most of the science is there, so we know it's happening. Most
Yeah.
the most of the conservative or capitalist, whatever you want to call it, agenda was first to deny it, say no, it's not happening, and then say, okay, no, it is happening, but it's not humans' fault. It's natural. And now they're saying, yeah, it's happening, and it's already too late. What would you say to people who say, "Oh, it's already too late. Hey, we shouldn't do anything about it"?
Like that's such a I want to say that's such a fatalistic like mentality, right? Because we can do it. Like we can dismantle capitalism in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue is that it becomes so like unassailable in our heads because of what it entitles.
Mm-hmm.
Like it would mean such an important change, but it's such a like possible change too. And I think that's scary for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
And even then, like a lot of people go, well, if it was like anything else, like oh the sun's gonna rise tomorrow, like we can't do anything about it. I think that would be like a normal reaction, but it's not a normal reaction that we are confronted with like economic and societal like catastrophe, and people are just like oh well we can do anything about it, right? Like and you see it with when you look at people who are disappeared. Like when people disappear, the hope is like we might be able to do something about it, and people mobilize around. It's not the same thing with the environment, I would say, because people are so detached from the environment under capitalism, and it's the same thing. Like it's very hard to see how the environment is an important thing when you're detached from the basic things that make us human. Like you're detached from how food is produced. So if you get all your food from Walmart, you're not gonna see like how the environment affects farmers. If you can see like if you see nature at a zoo, you're not gonna see how the like climate change changes like the environment of animals, right? So we're constantly detached from this, like this literal extinction because of capitalism. Like we're stuck in like thinking that oh the gas is 316 or 37, right? And we gotta pay the bills as opposed to like thinking about our own existence, right? Our own planet, right? So I would say like that's such a like negative and um what's the word? It's such a stupid like perspective to have.
Mm-hmm.
Like even if the damage is like unrepairable, where we can work together to fix some of it in our communities, right? Like in the case of the Rio Grande Valley, where we are from, we can talk about how we can mitigate the impact that SpaceX and Elon Musk is doing to our beaches, right? And
Yeah.
that's an important discussion, I would
Yeah.
say.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I don't agree with the mentality to just, oh, let's just give up, roll over and give up. because it's gonna just benefit the people already in power. Because who are the people who are going to be most affected by climate change? It's going to be the rich people who can afford insurance. Because, oh, the hurricane comes and destroys your house. Oh, the rich person has insurance on the house.
Yeah.
Easy peasy. But the working class people who can afford house insurance or who don't have as much benefit, their house gets destroyed. Nothing they can do about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, their community gets destroyed by a hurricane. They can't move out. They're stuck there.
Yeah, and even when food prices rise because of like global warming or this or that, the people who are gonna feel it more is like low income people, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Um, you mentioned that in order to fix the problems of climate change, we have to get rid of capitalism, and I'm definitely on the same board as you. I don't see a way to fix the climate issues without getting rid of capitalism.
Yeah, like capitalism is based in this idea like we have to constantly grow, like the economy has to continue growing,
Mm-hmm.
and we know that we live in a planet of limited resources, right? So it's just like simply incompatible.
Yeah.
Like we cannot keep this forever,
Mm-hmm.
right? And even such basic things as like food, like we produce like I think it's like 10 times as much food as we need, like as a human, like in humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it's not an issue of production, but an issue of like redistribution, right? Because under our economic model, like food is made to be sold, not to be like consumed, right?
Yeah.
So so you know, capitalism and economical and climate collapse are not separate. They're one with the other.
Yeah, I agree. You can't talk about one without the other for sure. Um, like no amount of recycling me and you do will ever have the same impact as much as an oil spill in the Gulf, or how much CO2 is committed by um, all the factories and stuff like that. And then
Yeah,
what about so okay, you want to fix climate change, you want to you want to go with more green energy like solar, wind. uh, how are you going to deal with Exxon and their lobbying of the government?
yeah, and even then, like it's such an interesting point because this is designed, this is constructed in such a way that climate change stops being about the system. It stops being about capitalism from this perspective. It becomes about the individual,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what is the individual capable of doing? Well, you can buy this product that is more environmentally conscious, right? So the entire question of climate change under capitalism or under the methods that capitalism offers is one that is designed to like make you stop thinking about capitalism, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh, it's not about our economic model. It's not about companies. It's about you,
Mm-hmm.
which of course is the biggest lie that has ever been told,
Oh, yeah.
right? So it creates this false sense of progress
Mm-hmm.
and meaning, right? Like, oh, my CO emissions are net zero, right? That doesn't work if if like companies are like producing billions of like CO2, right? Like it's not about one individual, it's about the system.
Yeah.
And that system, it's an economic system. And what's an economic system? It's a political system, right?
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. How do we fix the economy? Oh, everybody buy a Tesla. You know, buy the the electric cars.
Yeah, buy the sustainable clothing, buy the this thing as opposed to like a bottle of water,
Yeah.
which is valuable. I'm not saying they're not valuable, but it's like that's not gonna fix climate change.
Yeah.
Like it's not about the consumer; it's about the producer.
Yeah. So, um, what's the best way to achieve this um, abolishing or fixing our climate crisis? Because I hear a lot of people saying electoralism, but oh, let's elect this politician who will put um, our concern about climate change at the forefront, and they'll fix all the problems somehow. They don't tell you how. They just say, "Oh, we elect this person. This person has this plan, and then we'll be fine if we elect him."
Yeah, I feel like that's not how it should work because even then, like how can I put it? The current the current political system is designed in such a way that it reduces political engagement, right? Like politics exists in one place, in one day, the ballot. It exists on the day of the election, and you go vote, and that's it. And then you go back to your private life. That's not how it works. Like you cannot just elect the the solution for such a big problem. Like that problem, that solution comes from the people who are being affected. So I would say that the most effective way to like retaliate against capitalism and against climate change is not through electoralism, but towards organization. Like there's a bunch of different like organizations that work towards the environment and towards meaningful change. Right, I would say even here in the Rio Grande Valley, like we have Sierra Club, we have DSA, which I think is a good platform. That's why I like I'm a member of it, and we have Lupe, and we have this like set of organizations that are beyond politics. And I want to say like I believe that electoralism and elections are important, right? Like we cannot negate that they have meaningful impact, but that's not everything, right? And that's the whole point of like what capitalism tries to do is like, oh, well, you can fix climate change if you buy the Tesla, if you buy the environmental friendly like options that we give you. And if you don't vote, that's it. Like you don't need to organize. Like you're doing your part. That's not true. Like you have to organize on your own. If you want to make meaningful change, you need to get together with your community. Like talk to them.
Do some direct action. That's always been my preferred mode of politics because, like you were saying, electoralism is important. You should go out and vote, but that shouldn't be the only thing you go do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you were talking about the direct action, and one example I can remember off the top of my head was when they're building the border wall here at through the National Butterfly Center. There was tons of people went to go march and protest. Stuff like that. Do stuff like that too. Don't just go vote.
Yeah, like, and that creates like a sense of community. It's not even that you have accomplished the goal, but like you get the sense that you're part of something bigger, of a community of people, right? And that starts fixing a lot of the issues that we see, like when we're talking about environmental damage. Like one way that we can fix it is that if we even talk about it. If we talk about our communities, like how is it impacting your household? How is it impacting the farms here in the valley? And how can we resolve it? And like can we talk to the mayor? Can we do a protest? Can we do like a petition? Can we do like more direct action? You know, it's possible, right? It's hard. I'm not gonna say it's easy, but it's like it's doable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and um, one another one from another like direct protest or direct action that I can remember. Um, it was getting a lot of news in like the UK, and it was the this organization of like climate activists or whatever you want to call them. They were blocking roads, like just standing on the road, and for me, like, yeah, that's effective with getting your message out, but I think you're just gonna piss off a lot of the working class. You know, people who have to go to work to get paid. You're just gonna upset them. You know,
Yeah.
like, uh,
I, I heard that people like I would like that method works. I would say because it creates such an impact
mm-hmm,
that it cannot be ignored, right? Like if we blockade, I don't know, the highway, like
mm-hmm,
people are gonna notice that you're blocking highway, and they're gonna know why you do it.
mm-hmm,
It might be really unpopular, but it gets the message across. It
mm-hmm.
gets the message across to the community and to authorities in a very like unappealing way, but it does the job.
Yeah, it's all right for spreading the message, but I don't know if it'll get
Yeah.
people on your side,
Yeah,
so
so
to say.
an offer, a perspective that has been offered by a lot of organizing is like you gotta do that with the being smart. Like, of course, you can do that and hope that everything will be fixed by that, but you have to be aware that people don't like to have the streets like blockaded,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in that sense, we gotta like check our odds, like be aware of our environment,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, so for me, one of my preferred methods is, you know, uh, you have this company moving in that wants to cut down these trees in this forest, destroy the company's equipment, you know, find ways to annoy whatever party's responsible directly, you know, like
Yeah.
hit them at the source.
Yeah, and even then, like with social media, you can organize like so effectively, like because a lot of companies, because of because of that, produce like awareness of the environment. They want us to say that oh, we're environmentally friendly. That's not true, right? And you can go to these places that are like having environmental damage and record what's happening in reality, and that hurts the company
Mm-hmm.
because it rejects their image that they're trying to project. And of course, we can get around like Roblox ecology, right? But that's a good discussion to have about it.
Yeah. So we're saying Roblox ecology because of YouTube, and they don't want us to say that naughty word that starts with a T. But how do you feel
Yeah.
about eco Robloxism?
Eco Roblox system,
Yeah.
like the action of like trying to implement ecology um, beyond like the capitalist framework is I think it's a great idea. Like the way it sounds scary,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not so scary. Like it's taking back the land
Mm-hmm.
through like different methods, and it's like planting seeds around your community. Like in my backyard, like some plants started growing up, which I think it's nice because the what you call it, the landlord, he doesn't want growth, he doesn't want plants. I want plants because plants are nice. So I do my best efforts to like keep the plants alive, right? And we can do those efforts, and that's meaningful in its own way, right? And it's more what I was saying, like it's organizing with your community. It's like, okay, what piece of land can I do like Roblox ecology?
Mm-hmm.
And then you do that, and then it creates meaningful change,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like people start noticing, like if you plant a lot of beautiful flowers in desolated land, like people are gonna like the flowers, and they want to say, like, maybe we should keep them, as opposed to like destroy them with and making another parking lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one thing I think people think about when it comes to eco Robloxism is they think that you have to be like some sort of violence towards like the people, right? Like do something to the people causing um, the damage to the environment, and not necessarily. So, from my understanding, you can um, damage property, do property damage to get the message out, or to keep them from taking the land. You don't necessarily have to uh, like be the Unabomber or someone like that, you know.
Yeah, I agree. Like, there's different methods that are important, and again, like I'm saying, like there should be always be a dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the issue comes that people want to dialogue. They want to talk about their issues,
Mm-hmm.
but companies don't want to talk about it because in the corporate world, like dialogue is not an option, profit is the option.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, I think people have the right to like defend their land
Mm-hmm.
and like do these like non-violent principles are fine. I think I endorse them, like plant things, like do Roblox ecology and reclaim the land through flowers and plants, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, I agree. Hmm. I don't, I don't know what else to talk about. Maybe unless you want to wrap it up here, but maybe we can talk about a little more about kind of um, maybe why people are so abstracted from the climate issue, right? Because like you were saying, it's very hard to put yourself in those shoes because it's such an abstract topic. Like um, if you're far from the sea level, or you're well off and the price effects won't affect you, or you don't plan on having kids, stuff like that, why should you care about the climate changing? I know it's weird to say, why should you care that earth is dying, but there's genuinely some people that seem to
Yeah.
just not care, or they believe that um, Elon Musk is our savior and we'll be in Mars or somewhere else by that
Yeah.
time.
Like I think it's a societal thing because if you look at some like native societies, are my best example. Like native societies live with the land, and they sought to they seek. I'm sorry, they seek to find a balance between nature and the interests of humans, right? And I think that's a very valuable economic model. Our economic model is so detached from the land and to nature that it's like we see the human struggle as different than the nature struggle, which is not true, right? Like we're related to the land, but our way of life is so detached from the environment that it's hard to see. Like like some people can literally go their entire lives without looking at a farm because of the way that capitalism is made up, and and so that causes that sort of detachment from environmental change, and is this sort of like we live in a bubble in most cases that is like we're insulated from immediate climate collapse, but but communities are not so or urban or um, developed. They're more vulnerable to this. Like if you go to like rural America that is still like depending on the land, you see that climate change is real, right? And so like our conception of nature is very limited because we don't have nature around us, right? Like even like if you're in a city, like the most nature you have is like the trees on the sidewalk and then the park, right? It's that's not how it works. like in other areas, like you have concrete and natural forces that we should maintain. And if you upset those natural forces, then you get in trouble, right?
Hmm.
So is that sort of like detachment from the environment that is manufactured? Like it's not like that. It shouldn't be like that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel you. I'm incredibly unconvinced by, the people who um, believe in, like, oh, we'll just move to another planet or something like that. Like, that's so far from now, and the
Yeah.
issue's already here right now.
Yeah, and even then, like if you move to another planet, what are you gonna do then? Like, are you gonna do the exact same thing? The Earth is nice. Like the framework is there to do better.
Hmm.
Like what people don't understand is that what's crazy is not the environmental or the ecological solution. What's crazy is the way that we live, the way that we live right now.
Hmm.
Like if you look at stuff like meat consumption, like people for centuries they didn't eat a lot of meat because meat is like expensive and animals are hard to maintain, right? But right now, like people are so ingrained into eating meat in all of their daily like diet that it's causing them real problems
Hmm.
because they're so detached from the land, right? Like it's way easier to eat a steak when you don't grow the cow, when you don't see all the work that goes into like producing that, or like you can eat chicken nuggets. Chicken nuggets are nice if you just go to McDonald's and buy the dollar chicken nuggets. But if you go into the whole process of like growing chickens, then you realize like holy shit, this is precious.
Hmm.
Like this is not easy. Like it shouldn't be like the way that we understand right now. And it has two kinds of consequences. It has a kind of consequence that our diet is terrible, right? Like we eat so much freaking meat that it's like it's not good.
Hmm.
And people are just like so like unaware of the way that we live, and they think that's normal. It's not normal.
Hmm.
It's not good either.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's ridiculous how much we eat meat and how much impact on the environment um, eating meat has. Like, to keep eating meat the way we're doing right now costs so much, like, water, so much of our fresh water to grow all, because most of the crops that we grow don't actually like feed us. It feeds the cows, the chickens, all of that. All that water and all that land that's being taken up by the factory farms, and how many of them we
Yeah.
have just to consume a Whopper every day, or have your
Wow,
chicken,
okay.
yeah, have your chicken nuggies every day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's crazy because like um it's so weird that how people look at meat because normally when you look at meat, it's a real animal, right? Like it came from a living being. Well, that's not the case in capitalism because it's like you can see the burger and you never see the animal, right? And you can spend your entire life without looking at a real cow,
Hmm.
right? And it's this sort of like it I don't want to say it dehumanizes, but it insensitizes people
Yeah.
of like don't look at what you're eating, don't look at the way it's produced, look at the result, and look at the pleasure. Like food starts being about like the complex economic thing that it is, and it's reduced to pleasure, to like yeah, right. So like people stop looking at meat as this precious thing and it's looking at it from as just this commodity,
Hmm.
right? It stops being like the product of labor, the product of like a literally like a living thing, a living animal, and it's just like oh, I want to eat meat, like I want to have a Whopper,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, no, we're definitely very, very abstracted from um, eating meat. Like, if you knew like all the things that went into factory farming while eating your Whopper, probably wouldn't want to eat that Whopper anymore. Not every day, at
Yeah,
least. But
I agree. Yeah.
it it's hard now, like not to do that because they're so cheap. It's so cheap compared to if you want to eat healthy or all that stuff. That stuff it's way more expensive to go and do all that. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it's crazy that this sort of like and we're talking about it like that sort of green understanding of like nature, like living a good life with vegetables, like a good diet. It's expensive. It shouldn't be,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's designed in this way to like make even a decent diet something that is profitable, right? So I think that's what seems radical to me.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't seem radical to me to stop eating meat. What's radical is that eating meat is so ingrained in our culture,
Mm-hmm.
right? That everything we eat is like it can come from nowhere, right? Like we're so detached from like what actually goes into our food.
Yeah. And then sort of like how you're talking about how meat has become so ingrained in our culture, we kind of look down, or there's a group of people that look down upon people who don't eat meat. Like, remember, I don't know if you were around on the internet during the time, but when veganism started becoming like really popular, they called like vegan men soy boys. They were, oh, you're a soy boy, things like that. Like, it's crazy. And you have people like Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson promoting like all meat diets, that it's more healthy some way, just making it more and more ingrained in our culture.
Yeah, and even that meme of like soy boys is like stupid. I would say because like soy is it's a nice thing. Like if you look at well, maybe it's from a story, but like soybeans are like traditional to Chinese food and culture for like hundreds of years,
Yeah.
right? So this whole thing of like soy as like this like undesirable food that is full of shit. It's just not historically accurate. Like Chinese people have managed so many ways, so many cool ways to like eat soybeans that is nice,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
it's just stupid.
Yeah,
That's
no,
what we
yeah, it's so ridiculous. Cause so
yeah.
the reason that it came up was because they figured that people. So it had been known, pretty popular, that the plant version of estrogen is in soy. So it's not estrogen, but it's like some sort of plant version or something like that, right? That there's some sort of estrogen, and oh, if you eat it, it'll make you more feminine because it has estrogen, which is not. It's not true at all. That does not happen. So that's where
Yeah.
that's where the whole meme came from. It's very, very stupid and very ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely.
Mhm. Okay, I don't know what else more to talk about. So if you got anything else, let me know.
No, I think it's good. I'm kind of hungry, so maybe I wanna eat something.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, this was a good podcast. I liked it.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
it went super fast. I think.
Yeah. I was looking at the time and I was like, Jesus Christ, that much time has passed by already. It always goes super quick.
Yeah, I agree. That was fun.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Of course, of course.